All right, it's Natty here with Missionaries, Moms, and Mondays, and I am incredibly grateful you're here. There's two things that I want you to gain from every episode if possible: an increased understanding about what your missionary might be experiencing, and a tool to help you take some action. At the end of the day, my ultimate goal for these videos is to help you find the answer to the question, what can I do? So let's keep going. The big emotions that show up on the mission, they're not uncommon. In episode 1, we learned all about what it looks like to leave the window of tolerance, the lid flipping, and how it feels in the physical body. And the hope for all of that is that we could gain some understanding about what it might feel like out there on the mission, as well as provide some tools to actually take some action and engage with that physiology. Now, in this episode, we're going to become more aware of why some things move us out of that window of tolerance so quickly. And why sometimes it even seems like our window of tolerance is like this big. Our tolerance for stress is this big. And everything's moving us outside of that window of tolerance. Why? Well, understanding this is actually going to help us apply some really simple, very tangible tools. And it can even help us see what we can do to start increasing our window of tolerance and expand our capacity for tolerating the stress and the chaos and the busyness of life. Now, to tee this all up, let's go to a familiar story in the Book of Mormon. In 1 Nephi, we're following the story of a family that's been called of God on their own mission of sorts. It's not all roses and daisies on this mission by any stretch of the imagination. Now, one of the experiences that they had was when they had gone for what seemed to be some period of time, staying in one place after all their travel, and now we know that they've got to travel and they need food, and Nephi breaks his bow. Now, most of us are pretty familiar with this story, but I'm going to try and really paint the picture so that we can find some similarities here. First, we know they've been where they were at for a while, right? They've become familiar with it. And then there's a commandment to move, to take on that mission. Now, one of the first things we find out is that they're going to have to pack up everything they can carry. So if they have to carry it, it's likely they left some things behind. Maybe they're living only on what they could carry around with them. Sounds an awful lot like my son living out of his suitcases on his mission, right? Then they traveled in the wilderness for many days. Now, based on their location, I can imagine that it was hot. Maybe it was dusty. Maybe it was dirty. Maybe it was tiring. Maybe it was sweaty. Sound familiar with some of our missionaries in the different parts of the regions? Then, after they'd been doing that for many days, they finally pitched their tents to have some rest and obtain food. Oh, and then tragedy struck. Nephi broke his bow, and it flipped everyone's lid. His brothers were angry. Everyone's starting to murmur exceedingly. Everything feels like suffering and affliction, and they were all exceedingly sorrowful. Even Lehi, the great prophet. Why? What was the cause of all of this intensity of distress? The emotions, the sadness, the fear, the anger, the pain, the turmoil, where was it coming from? Interestingly enough, we learned that they were much fatigued and also in want of food. In essence, they were tired and hungry, and they'd been displaced physically. So let's consider how this plays out with our own missionaries. One missionary I had the opportunity to speak with was traveling to his mission, and he had a really long flight. He had to get up very early for his flight, so he didn't get good sleep the night before. Then he got sat in a middle seat in the back of the plane, sitting in his suit and tie, and he was very uncomfortable, so he couldn't sleep. They had very little to eat and drink on the flight, and the travel over was just uncomfortable and exhausting. Then, during his layover, when he was looking forward to getting food and drink, his card didn't work. And he didn't have any cash with him, so he didn't have any food or any water. So he continues traveling. He gets to his destination. All in all, since the time he's woken up till now, it's been like 32 hours. He hasn't slept. He hasn't eaten. He's had very little to drink. To say the least, he is tired and hungry. So then he lands. His companion takes him straight to the mission office, and it's the middle of the night his time, but the middle of the day their time. And at that point, he's informed that he's going to move right into his area, and oh my gosh, his lid flipped. It was like the brothers, Laman and Lemuel, Lehi, all of it. He was angry. He was frustrated. He was in intense distress. Everything just, He could feel his heart start to pound and his chest got heavy. It was hard to breathe. His eyes got blurry. His feet got tingly. And he'd never experienced anything like this before. He had no idea what was happening, and that made it 10 times worse. He was now afraid of his fear. He was afraid of all of the feelings he was having in his body. And because of that, he just broke down. He broke down in an absolute puddle of tears. He wasn't understanding at all how the lack of sleep, food, water, sunlight, not knowing where his personal belongings were, not having a bed, not having a safe location, not being in a known space. He wasn't understanding how any of that was impacting his emotions, and he had no understanding of how those emotions would feel when they came out. So I want you to think about that. Can you see the similarities between these two stories? You got a strong family, we got strong missionaries. Both of them answering the call of the Lord, both of them taking only what they can carry, both of them going to unfamiliar destinations, both of them have to travel through difficulties, both of them feeling fatigued every single day, both of them maybe having food issues. Can you just see? The wear and tear on the physical needs eventually flipped the lid. Why does that happen? I want to make sure that we really understand this because this one is super powerful and once understood, so simple in its solutions. Do you remember learning about Maslow's hierarchy of needs in maybe like the 6th or 7th grade? Well, I remember learning about it, but to be completely honest, the only thing I actually remember is there was a triangle, and when we were done talking about this random triangle with these levels in there, all I remember is get a good night's rest, eat a good breakfast, and bring a number 2 pencil for the test in the morning. That's all I remember. I didn't understand at all what this thing was teaching. And the crazy part is that now that I understand what it's teaching, it's literally the key to answering so much of the emotional distress of our missionaries. So what is Maslow's hierarchy? Maslow's hierarchy is a theory that helps us understand human motivation by dividing our needs into these 5 levels. Now, the levels are prioritized at the base with an understanding that we can't overlook the base layers of needs. We can't outdo the base layers. They have to be prioritized above everything else, or we eventually run out of the motivation to continue our pursuit. So let's see how this works. We're going to start at the top here. And at the top is self-actualization, or what I like to call vision. It's the picture we hold of ourselves achieving and progressing. So we have a missionary out there, and they're picturing themselves in their little tag, and they've pictured this since they first sang the song, "I Hope They Call Me on a Mission" in primary, and every day since they opened their call, and they've got this picture of being a missionary. Whatever that looks like to them, that is their self-actualization, that is their vision. Below that, we have the level of esteem, or what I like to call identity. This is how we see ourselves. It's the I am statement. It's truly who we are as people. And so now we have these missionaries out there claiming, I am a missionary. This is who I am. This is my esteem. This is my identity. And it's filling this space. Next in line comes love and belonging. It's friends, it's family, it's social life at home, it's companions and mission presidents and districts and zones, and even the friends they're teaching on their mission. It's that feeling they have of wanting to do a good job on this mission and make all those people proud, to show gratitude to those who sacrificed to get them out on that mission, to help their mom who's been so sad since they left to feel better, or be an example to a sibling who might be struggling back at home with their own testimony. Maybe they're trying to show their girlfriend or their boyfriend that they're marriage material. The list in love and belonging goes on and on and on. Now below that, we have safety. Now this is our need to feel safe, both emotionally and physically. And then on the bottom rung, you have physiological needs. All the physical elements that we need to function. A place to sleep, food to eat, water to drink, transportation, materials, supplies, money, etc. As you can see this all laid out, what Maslow's teaches us is that if the foundational physiological needs are not met, we will not feel safe. Whoa. We won't feel safe? What happens when we don't feel safe? Oh, that's right. The amygdala does its job. The body's defense system down here, threat detection center, sounds the alarm saying, whoa, we don't feel safe. Lid flips, window of tolerance exited, and here we go with all that uncomfortable physiology. Fascinating, right? Well, what we also learn from this is that if those physical needs and safety aren't met first, the rest of all of these motivations will actually crush us. If there's cracks in the foundation of physiological needs and safety, and we go try and focus on building and satisfying love and belonging, esteem, identity, vision, the layers we build will continue to add weight that can't be held. And that cracked foundation will crumble, and we'll crumble right along with it. How does this show up with our missionaries? Well, a lot of times our missionaries are trying to cling to their desire to be a great missionary. They're clinging to the vision. They wear that tag, they declare, I am a missionary with all their heart, and then they push. They push for their people. They push for the mission president. They push for their friends. They push for those they're teaching. And while all of that is incredibly beautiful, it doesn't sustain them when the big emotions show up, when the frustration and the exhaustion and the anxiousness shows up, and all those feelings that come, they start blaming themselves. Oh my gosh, do I not have enough faith? Am I not studying enough? Am I not praying enough? And while those really are great self-reflection questions, perhaps the first question needs to be, have I gotten any sleep? Have I drank enough water? Have I eaten enough food? Do I have my luggage? Do I know where I'm sleeping tonight? Do I have the right clothes? The first place to ask questions kind of needs to be, are my physical needs met? The next set of questions are my physical needs met in a way that makes me safe? Do you have a place to sleep that you feel safe? I had a missionary that couldn't sleep at night because it was so hot in their mission. He would just toss and turn all night long. Now, he had an apartment and a bed. Physiological needs met, but sleeping didn't feel safe because he just couldn't sleep. So he bought a small fan, pointed it directly on him as he slept, and before long, he cut his anxious feelings in half. His words. Another missionary was serving in the African nations, and they have a lot of bugs in their apartment. He had a bed, he had an apartment, but he didn't feel safe falling asleep at night because of the bugs. So, got him a bug net for sleeping, and he was finally able to get the rest he needed because it calmed him down dramatically because he wasn't worried about the bugs while he slept. He felt safe. A sister missionary had never shared a room before. Now, she had a bed and she had an apartment, but she didn't feel safe because her companion made noises in the night. It was freaking her out, waking her up in a panic. So her nervous system was going through hyperarousal nightly, leaving her feeling really anxious every morning. So she started using eye covers and earplugs, those little squishy orange ones, right? And as the sleep came, the anxiousness left. That same check-in system can be used with all the physiological needs. Water. Man, so many missionaries, they have access to water, but a lot of that water is not safe to drink. So I've seen missionaries in foreign missions, again, have access, not safe to drink. They run out of money on their cards and can't buy bottled water until they get money on their card. So they go without water for a couple days unless they're given some at a meal. Why? Because they're a missionary. They don't want to disappoint themselves. They don't want to disappoint their mission president. They don't want to disappoint their companion. They don't want to break any rules. They want to be completely obedient. So we see how these top tiers can just be amazing, and they can feel really heavy if the fundamental needs aren't met. If they're dehydrated, trying to be their best self feels like a lot. So what can be done to help them stay in their budget, continue to be the great missionary they want to be, continue to live inside of those levels of obedience, and get their physiological needs met? Well, one missionary we worked with, his parents sent him a filtration water bottle that was really cool. And what happened was he could put any water in that and it would filter it and make it safe for him to drink. And so he started having water all the time. It made a huge difference. Food's another big one. Yeah, they have food, but do they feel safe with the food they're eating? One sister missionary I was working with was dealing with a significant amount of just angst. And as we talked, I found out she was feeling sick all the time. She had a gluten sensitivity, but she didn't want to not eat the food that was given to her by the members because she felt like they were so generously giving of themselves, and she didn't want to offend them. So again, here comes that love and belonging motivation. She was worried about the people, and she was afraid that it would look bad on the missionaries now and in the future if she made them feel bad. So now here's identity and vision. And so she was putting those needs above her own physical needs. So we worked out a game plan where she always brought something in her backpack that was safe for her to eat. It was gluten-free. And then she would take just small portions at the home she was at, but then she had something to eat to sustain her in her bag. I had another elder that really hated fish, and in his mission, all fish. They served fish at every meal. And because he struggled with it, he didn't like to eat it, but he never wanted to offend anybody, love and belonging. And he really wanted to be that great missionary serving in that area, identity. And he'd always pictured himself just dialing into wherever he was called, whatever culture he was in, vision. So he just always was trying to try some of that fish every time. And there was nothing wrong with that, but he wasn't getting enough nutrition because he wasn't eating enough. So in the first few weeks of his mission, he thought he was going crazy. His emotions were all over the place. Then we just made the simple transition where he started to bring a little bit of food in his bag with him that he could eat, and then he could continue to try the fish that would let him show up for how he wanted to show up. But he would also have in his bag an apple or a protein bar or some trail mix, sometimes even made a sandwich. And he would keep that in his bag, and that way he was getting the nutrition he needed and he could still try the fish. He felt really good about the way he was showing up. He was actually able to tolerate the fish a little quicker because he knew he wasn't going to go hungry all day. His emotions settled down really quickly, and actually his love for the fish did grow. So, little point of fact there. Another missionary in a constant state of just anxiousness, mind was always racing, legs shaking, stomach crawling all day, every day. And through a series of questions, we identified they had never unpacked their bags. They'd been transferred, each transfer, the previous 3 times, so they decided not to unpack their bags. It was difficult to find anything. Their personal belongings they were a mess. They constantly felt unsettled and constantly in a state of motion. And so again, they put this need for expediency and this picture of transfer and helping with the mission above the safety and need of order and organization. So they took their next P-Day, they unpacked their bags, they organized their stuff, they settled into their apartment, and with restoration of order and organization, peace totally returned. Another missionary, struggling emotionally. We found out they weren't sleeping well at night. So we found out that in their apartment there was 4 missionaries and only 3 beds. One of the missionaries was on the floor, and between that floor, there was the 3 beds and the floor. And so all the other elders always were stepping on his blankets and sometimes even his pillows just to get to their own beds. Not because they were being rude or inconsiderate, but there was literally no other place to step. So for this one elder, there was just no safe place to sleep. So a single phone call to the mission leaders in the area helped us to learn that they didn't even know that one of the beds was missing. The very next day, they brought a bed over, and as a matter of fact, they brought bunk bed frames so that they could put 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top. Everybody had a place. Everybody had space. Safety was restored. Sleep was restored. Emotions were calmed down, and it became an incredibly productive area with everybody excited about the work again. See, are you seeing how this works? These are very actionable, very practical, very tangible, and simple steps. They can be taken by anyone, and they're truly affecting the emotions that are happening. Because when our physiological needs aren't met in a state of safety, it truly rocks the foundation. When those needs aren't met, those cracks in the foundation, oh baby, it feels like everything else is then crushing them. And the problem is that when it starts to crush them, the questions turn from, man, I really want to be a great missionary, to maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I wasn't cut out to be a missionary. I don't think I can do this. This isn't what I thought it would be. Can you see how the foundational cracks on physiological needs and safety are then turning those other areas of love and belonging, identity, vision, into a weight that's cracking the foundation instead of a motivation? We've even seen this play out in the scriptures multiple times. Well, let's take one example. Let's take the prophet Elijah for a minute. In 1 Kings 19, we see Elijah, and he's afraid, and he sits down feeling what we can only imagine is overwhelm and fear and hopelessness because of his situation. And he says, I'm done. He asks the Lord, just take me. And an angel of the Lord shows up, and what's the first thing they do? It's not a motivational pep talk on faith and prayer and trust. Not yet. The first thing that happens is he says, eat and drink. And then he sleeps, and then he eats, and then he eats and drinks some more. And then He continues his journey for the Lord. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland gave a talk in 2018, and it was entitled Bearing One Another's Burdens. In his talk, he teaches us to refortify ourselves. He said, for those of you who earnestly seek to bear another's burdens, it's important that you refortify yourself and build yourself back up when others expect so much of you and indeed take so much out of you. No one is so strong that they do not ever feel fatigued or frustrated or recognize the need to care for themselves. Jesus certainly experienced that fatigue, felt the drain on his strength. He gave and gave, but there was a cost attached to that. And he felt the effects of so many relying on him. When the woman with an issue of blood touched him in the crowd, he healed her, but he also noted that virtue had gone out of him. I have always been amazed that he could sleep through a storm on the Sea of Galilee so serious and severe that his experienced fisherman disciples thought the ship was going down. How tired is that? How many sermons can you give and blessings can you administer without being absolutely exhausted? The caregivers have to have care too. You have to have fuel in the tank before you can give it to others. For all my moms out there, when our children are far away and struggling, it can feel pretty helpless and hopeless sometimes, can't it? And when we're trying to ask that question, what can I do? I hope that you'll let this tool help you find some answers to that question. This principle, this tool, can pretty much apply to everything. I want you to evaluate your day, evaluate your life. Are your needs met? Are they met in a way that makes you feel safe? Does it allow you to show up for those that you love? Can you be the best version of yourself? Are you becoming what you want every day? Are you living towards that vision? If not, what's missing? What's not allowing you to progress? If you'll do that and gain experience with it, you'll be able to have a different kind of conversation with your missionary. And then you can use this tool in those conversations. Ask them, are they sleeping at night? If not, simply ask, what's getting in the way of them sleeping well? Ask them, are they getting enough food? And if not, what do they need? Do they feel good when they eat? If not, what's in the way? Do they feel safe in their apartment? Do they have space for their belongings? Have they put everything away and unpacked it? Have they taken it out of their suitcase and organized themselves? Do they have groceries? Do they have water? Do they have the right clothes for the area? Are they hot? Are they cold? These kinds of simple questions might just lead you to some profound discoveries where you can help heal the cracks in the foundation and help your child feel safe, so that they really can go serve those friends. They really can own that kind of missionary they want to be and progress towards that picture, the picture we truly want for them, just like they want for themselves. As always, moms, we can do this. This tool is an important one. It's simple and it's remarkably effective. See you next time.